Welcome to the Tomorrow's World Today podcast. We sit down with experts, world-changing innovators, creators, and makers to explore how they're taking action to make tomorrow's world a better place for technology, science, innovation, sustainability, the arts, and more. On this archive episode, host George Davison, who is also the host of Tomorrow's World Today on the Science Channel, sits down with Tom Fanning, former VP, head of U.S. truck tire market at Continental Tire. Tom discusses his nonlinear career path at Continental, emphasizing the importance of curiosity in STEM education. He also touches on the future of connected tires and autonomous driving.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, maybe we should start off with a little background of, what is head of U.S. market truck tires? That sounds like a pretty important title.
Well, it's a fun title. Continental is one of the largest automotive suppliers in the world, but we're also one of the largest tire manufacturers in the world. So as you probably know, there's a lot of different types of tires: passenger, commercial vehicles, specialty, agricultural. So my responsibility is for the U.S. market for our truck tire segment.
I see. So is that something that you started off with as a dream for your work when you were young, or did you gradually fall into this direction somehow?
It was kind of a non-linear track, I would say. So I started off in high school thinking I wanted to be a race car driver, an automotive mechanic, and that somehow evolved through some time in the military and finishing college. And actually my first job was in human resources, if you can believe that, and then working for several dealers, both on the passenger side and on the truck tire side, and eventually 21 years ago coming to work for Continental.
That's really nice to hear. So what we're saying is that it wasn't a direct, straight path to where you are today.
Absolutely not. When I graduated university, I never thought I would be responsible for the U.S. market for truck tires for Continental, for sure.
But here we are.
But here we are.
So maybe we could walk it back a little bit and try to identify some of the, let's say, fun spots or challenging spots when you were younger. Because when we were younger, we always, we have these big dreams and we think it's going to be a straight shot, but that's if we have a dream. Some kids don't know what they're doing, right?
That's right.
Did it all kind of start in your head in high school, or maybe did you go back to middle school? Where did it all start?
I would say it was probably even earlier than that. I was the kid that always took things apart and tried to put them back together, and had kind of this natural mechanical inclination, you would say, and then that attached itself to automobiles and messing with cars and working on cars, and then the aspiration to be a mechanic, and then thinking, okay, maybe there's something better. And I think that evolution was probably during high school, that maybe I thought, okay, let's do something different than being a mechanic, which is a noble profession for sure. But then I went to college, spent some time in the military, kind of got my head adjusted there on a different track, and then went out and took that passion that I had for mechanical aptitude, starting out in college in engineering and eventually finishing in business, and said, okay, how do I apply that to something I'm passionate about, that I love, that I really enjoy? And that's how I found the tire business.
Very interesting pathway that you've found. I'm kind of curious, you said you started off with taking things apart, and I think it's a blessing if you have somebody when you're younger that says it's okay to take something apart, and kind of try to figure it out, right?
Right.
When we were younger, we used to do the same thing, and our favorite day was junk day. Back in the old days, that people would go in their house and anything they wanted to get rid of, they'd set it out on the corner, or out by the street, and they'd come and get it. Well, that was our, go grab stuff that's really kind of cool, and then we start tearing into it and say, how does that work and why? And then somebody finally said, hey, can we put it back together again? That was a whole difference. That was another challenge.
Yeah. I got more in trouble for not being able to put it back together than I did for taking it apart. So,
right. Yeah, if you take the wrong thing apart at the house, you're going to get in trouble.
That's true. That's true.
So, but the whole idea of just taking things apart is such a wonderful way to softly find your way into the field of engineering and making. And it's interesting that you're bringing it up in this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I think the experimentation part is the important part, right? Taking it apart, determining in your young mind how it works, which probably most likely you have no idea how it works, but just that experimentation and curiosity to see how it comes apart and goes back together. That was always the draw for me.
Wonderful. Well, that's a good start. So, let's just pivot off of that. How important would you say STEM-based classes are for someone interested in pursuing a career at your company?
That's a really good question, because obviously we have tens of thousands of engineers working at Continental, and we have chemists, and we have mathematicians and computer programmers. So there's a ton of work in the STEM industry. I would say it's not critical, but it's an extremely important part. And I think that also what's important to talk about is people get confused that they think they pick STEM and they're going to stay in STEM. And I think I'm an example of someone that started out kind of in a STEM and an engineering background and pivoted over to the business side. And we've had people at Continental pivot the other way. So they came in maybe in a traditional sales and marketing position, and now they're sitting in product management or something like that. So I think it's important to have an open mind. STEM is obviously important for a large manufacturer like Continental, but it's not completely critical to having a job there.
Interesting. So we have in most companies, you do have somebody's in an R&D lab trying to figure out the future. You need some technical folks there, some marketing folks, and then maybe on another side, less creative. It's the numbers, it's organizing the math, it's trying to figure out budgets and keep things moving on time. So somewhere in that world, and you can move around once you get inside the organization.
Absolutely, and we have, even in my team, dozens of examples of people that came in a very traditional career path and then ended up, because they were curious and they wanted to explore and they wanted to find a new path potentially, you find them in a completely different discipline from where they came in from.
Interesting. And so in order to move like that inside Continental, is it safe to assume that, if you're committed to your work, that you build trust with those around you and it's easier to move through the organization? So good work ethic, good contribution to whatever the job is, kind of opens up a doorway, doesn't it?
It does. We talk a lot about our values and how values create value. And so one of those values is freedom to act. And so that's really important for us. And it's exactly what you said. If you have the right work ethic, if you have the curiosity, if you have the imagination, someone's most likely going to give you the keys to win. And so you can go from one position to the next and take that feedback and move forward.
Isn't that great? That's one of the blessings about, organizations that have been around quite a long time, is that they have systems. And they know they need young people coming up after the ones that are in there now. And so it's part of a process. You do want to welcome in new people, the younger folks, and then train them up. Because eventually the older folks like us, we're going to move along and we have grandparent duties to do eventually, right?
Exactly. I mean, this is our 150th year being in business. And so it's interesting when you talk about the automotive world or the tire world or whatever part of Continental you're talking about, there's no academic training in that. And so it's important to understand you're going to receive the building blocks to be successful in school and moving through middle school and high school and college and even postgraduate work, but you're really going to start learning when you go to work. And I think a lot of young people forget that. They think school is somehow over when you're finished, but that's really when the learning begins. And so, we have tons of processes to support that learning.
Oh, that's great. I think it makes life interesting too. A life of learning is an interesting life, and by getting in there and doing it and seeing the ramifications of your contribution inside an organization, it provides a lot of value to you as an individual. So for me, if I can get engaged in something and just find a spot, it's fun. It's not really work anymore.
Right. For me, the most rewarding piece is you come up with an idea, that idea develops into a project, and then you're given the go-ahead to move forward with the project. So now you're kind of in that project management phase. You're assembling a team to support the project, and then you're working that all the way through. So you really have the opportunity to come from the ideation phase to the execution, where you're bringing a product to market or maybe a new process internally, whatever it is, but you see it from end to end.
That's fun. That'll get you up in the morning, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, well, hey, we're going to scoot along here. All right, so with that, I guess you're a believer that just about anybody can be successful. Would that be fair to assume?
Absolutely. With the right attitude and the right drive, anyone can be successful.
Okay. Let's see. So did you have any mentors while you were growing up?
You know, I had tons. Obviously, my parents, when I was growing up, were huge impacts in my life. My family today, I had mentors in the military. I had mentors in college, even mentors in starting out in the tire business, kind of at the dealer side. So a lot of people that showed me the right way. But I think as important, I had some really bad mentors.
Interesting.
You know, and I think people miss that lesson because you can learn as much from a bad boss as you can from a good boss. Because I think everyone one day has the opportunity to be responsible for a team or lead a business or whatever it is. And it's important to have that self-critical mentality to learn from not only your mistakes, but mistakes you see other people make, so that we don't repeat that bad history. And so I was very fortunate to have a lot of people show me the right way to do things.
That's wonderful. You can there are building blocks there as well, right? So your value system, right? If somebody's giving you bad advice, you do have to have enough of your own internal fortitude to say, let me think about what I just heard from that person, right?
Right.
And let me reflect on that before I kind of want to take that into my special space and make it grow. And I think that's one of the benefits of like the people you surround yourself with. You do need to identify, you know, are those the kind of folks I want to be around?
Right. I think, you know, success models success, but more importantly, happiness models happiness, right? And so if you surround yourself with people that are negative, you're going to be negative. And so I think it's important that you, at a young age, you know, you have that moral compass and you have that value system that hopefully was born in your heart, and it's going to put you on the right trajectory. But you surround yourself with the people that are going to make you happy, keep you happy, support you, make you successful, make you a better leader, you know, just have more positivity in your life.
Agreed. Very important. So let's hit the values discussion here since we're in it. What would you say are a couple invaluable values that people should carry with them if they're coming to Continental?
Again, we talked a lot about curiosity. For me, a personal value is acting honorably. And a lot of people have a different definition of that, which is fine, but just do the right thing, right? You're never going to get in trouble for doing the right thing. And having that passion to win, Continental is going to give you the freedom to act, to grow, both personally and professionally. Having that passion to win, you know, it's not, life's not a competition, but business is. And so you want to get in there and be passionate about what you're doing.
Well, there you go. Well done. So let's chat about the next big innovation in your industry, since you're in the middle of it. Would you please address that?
Yeah. So there's so many innovations in our industry going on today. You know, I would say on the tire side of the business, it's about the connected tire. So tires that have a voice. So many times people don't understand this very small piece of rubber that's connecting the tire to the road when you're driving 55 miles an hour in the rain down the interstate, and how important that is. On the automotive side, I would say it's electrification and autonomous driving. So all the parameters and inputs around that people, even my two best friends that I was talking to a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that we will see in the very near term an opportunity to get into a vehicle and say, take me home.
Right.
And it takes you home. And maybe even quite possibly, as we've engineered, vehicles without steering wheels. So there's no driver input. And having that connectivity between the automotive system of the vehicle and the tire, and just imagining, coming in, you have a 3-hour trip, being in a vehicle that you don't even have to give input to, and the productivity you can imagine in that 3 hours without having to be engaged in driving.
So the connectivity of the tire to the pavement, if we could just chat about that, because as we do get further into the AI or artificial intelligence side of things, and vehicles are driving themselves, are you anticipating a lot of different wear pattern because you don't have humans acting, let's say, or acting too quickly or not quickly enough? How is that connected to the tire wear and longevity of a tire, let's say, versus what you might see in the future with AI managing the car?
Yeah, those are great points. So obviously massive acceleration or deceleration on a tire contributes to accelerated wear. So you would imagine that as we move towards a more connected vehicle world, those heavy acceleration or deceleration forces are limited. So that will improve tire wear. At the same time, we look for a future where the tire is adapting to the environment. So whether it's rain or ice or snow or extreme summer heat, that the tire has a chance to evolve and maximize its performance in the road environment.
Interesting. I imagine there's a lot of chemistry behind the scenes trying to figure that out.
Absolutely. And there's things like inflation, temperature, all of those are semi-controllable parameters within the equation. So we want to maximize all of that so that you have the safest mobility possible with the best comfort.
That makes sense. So while I was looking into your organization, I found that your company started back in the old days with a rubberized hoof device that made it so horses wouldn't slip on roadways. Is that correct?
Correct. Cobblestones. So back in 1871, 150 years ago this year, we were founded with a rubberized horse hoof. Is exactly right. Horseshoe.
And so now here we are all this time later. It's not a horse. We're talking about a different form of transportation, but we're still managing the challenge of two objects coming in connection with each other to try and create enough friction that you're holding it, but not holding so hard that you don't have progressive movement, right?
Exactly. So the evolution from rubberized horseshoes to rubberized carriage wheels to pneumatic tires to patterned through racing into agriculture. So that 150-year evolution. Now, back to, like you said, you want enough friction to have traction, but as we move into this electrification era, you don't want so much friction that you deplete battery life, for example. So it's that constant evolution in chemistry within the automotive side of the business, as well as, long success we've had on the tire side.
Right. So it is a process. Innovation throughout the ages. We see incremental improvement sometimes, right? Or we can get radical improvement if there's something invented that's completely, off the reservation. But it sounds like at Continental, industry is moving along in a certain direction. Those challenges come to your organization, and you figure out ways to solve challenges, form them into products, and then test those products, bring them to market to help that industry move on to the next stage, right?
Absolutely. So, like you said, the industry's churning along, as industries do. Obviously, we want to create these innovations that propel us ahead of the industry gain. And it's the normal scientific method, right? The hypothesis and the testing and the production and confirmation. Yes. So we're constantly working through that process, not just on the tire side with certain areas of internal combustion, with braking systems, with AI and driverless, automated vehicle technology. So constantly looking for ways to make mobility more sustainable, safer, better for the environment.
Understood. So as an innovator, right, if I was to go back in time, maybe what I should be thinking about are these basic building blocks. So if I wanted to be a participant in some form of innovation at an organization, be it a private organization or even a government organization, they have systems and processes as well. Mm-hmm. They all need to be updated. So, the way we would chat about that here would be, you have observational analysis. Where's the challenge? And then can you develop ideas and participate in group discussion to come up with, we could try this, we could try that. Somebody gets these ideas and then start to create concepts and prototypes out of that. Mm-hmm. And then there are a whole lot of different jobs in that space, let alone getting through the manufacturing process. And then eventually you have to get into marketing and distribution and your communications and storytelling and commercials. And they all have to project that benefit. So, that sounds like a lot of different types of jobs you exist inside a company like Continental.
Absolutely. You have the innovative process, right? And you described that very well. I think the most dangerous thing people get in the rut of, well, if that would have worked, someone would have thought of it already. Well, that's our job to think of it, right?
Yes,
to create these new ideas and then you develop the value proposal and you industrialize the product, and then there's everything behind it. And we talked about that earlier, the excitement of seeing it from end to end. And that's really where it comes from. Back 150 years ago, the idea that a metal horseshoe doesn't work well on cobblestones. So what if we had something that gives you a little more traction and we glue some rubber to a horseshoe and here we are, right? It's just that idea. And you formulate the idea and then you figure out how to industrialize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just took me back to my youth when I was actually on a horse and we were running across a field and it was the spring was starting to break in. Mm-hmm. And so the top maybe inch of mud or dirt was fluffy.
Yeah.
But under that 1 inch, the ground was still frozen, hard, solid. We came rolling up over the top of a hill, and that horse, we were flying, and the horse lost his footing. And the horse started to go down, and I let go. And the horse actually fell, and he stumbled all around, then took off. And of course, I didn't feel real intelligent after that. But then I thought, actually, I'm glad I let go. But the horse did lose his footing, and there's not a whole lot you can do. So I can imagine being a rider back over 100 years ago and seeing that as a real big problem. That's a pretty heavy horse,
Absolutely.
You don't want that coming down on you. Nor do I want to have a vehicle moving around on me when I'm trying to have a good traction situation on the road.
Yep.
So those are good. I just like the whole idea of like how to create a quality product and make life safer for human beings.
Absolutely. It's about giving back.
Right. It's a noble cause too.
Yep.
I can wake up in the morning and chase that cause to make life better for people.
Yep.
So, all right, let's see here. So how difficult is it for you to hire young adults with the skill sets needed for the innovation work that goes on at Continental at this point in time?
I think it's challenging. We talked a lot about learning and that continuum of learning and how people understand thought leadership. So everyone wants to go to college. Mm-hmm. I think that's not the be-all, end-all. We have hundreds of or tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs where we need people that know trades.
Yes.
Mold manufacturers, trade engineers, mechanics, those types of things. So we're constantly looking for those type of people, and we work with universities. So we probably have a little advantage, obviously, over a smaller company, but it's about finding that creative fit. Mm-hmm. That's the challenge.
That makes sense. That whole idea of you have to go to college, to get ahead. I don't agree with that either. Mm-mm. It's you find your path, what's right for you, and Yeah, I mean, if you can go on to a school where it's welding and mechanical situations are going on, you never know where that'll take you. But there's a lot of demand for people like that right now.
Absolutely, and I think we don't do our younger generation a good service in all this pressure for a 4-year degree.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone wants to go to college or even needs to go to college. I mean, I think there's tons of examples of captains of industry that didn't finish college, and people in the software industry. I think probably not many of them even finish college. They're just that genius savant type of programmer. So I think we need to do a better job also of talking about trade schools and the importance of that.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Tomorrow's World Today podcast. Join us next time as we continue to explore the worlds of inspiration, creation, innovation, and production. Discover more at tomorrowsworldtoday.com, connect with us on social media at TWT Explore, and find us wherever podcasts are available.